Hi guys, and welcome to it's going to be a review, a double review of two of the latest products from Fiio, the JD3, okay, and the JH3. All right, and I'm going to compare it with a few items which I think are relevant in terms of comparison. We'll start off with the JD3. Okay, comes in this plastic box, very simple. Open it up. Underneath over here, a little carrying case, a couple of tips, and the earphones themselves. These are non-removable cable. So yeah, well, I guess that's what happens sometimes with the more cheaper stuff, although there is removable cables as well. But anyway, in this particular case, they've made a non-removable cable. This is the microphone version one. The cable is actually not bad. It's actually a pretty decent quality cable. It's got good quality, nice thickness, doesn't tangle easily. It's nice. It's more than acceptable. These cost around $22, give or take. And in terms of, let's see if I can focus on the shells. There we go. The shells themselves are absolutely beautiful. I mean, very simple design, bullet style, proven itself time and time again, but very tastefully done, very beautiful. The colors dictate which is left and right. I can't really tell if the rear is vented or not. I can't really say. Perhaps it is. I'm not sure. Like I said, it's got a nice feel. In terms of fit, obviously they are tip dependent. The tips will dictate if they actually are going to stay put in your ears or not. And yeah, so obviously things like noise isolation and so on and so forth are obviously affected by that as well. I've used the standard tips. In this particular case, they actually fit me alright and stayed on fine. And well, what can I say? Let me just show you a graph, and by showing you a graph, perhaps we can get a better context of what I'm about to say. Okay, so here's the graph of the JD3. It seems to have a nice base, at least graph wise, and it does have a nice deep base. It bleeds a little bit, but nothing that is gonna be horrendous or anything of the sort. Decent enough mids. The pinna gain is fine. I guess, it's okay. But then things from let's say 2K onwards, just I don't know what happens there. You have that dip there, then you have that peak at almost 6K, which is very much in your face. At least for me, my resonance is at around 6.2. But this peak, it gets me. It really does hurt me. And then you have that resonant peak at 8, then it drops off, and that energy that you see there, supposedly at, I don't know, maybe 15K, 14, 15K. Well, I can't really hear it, so I have my doubts if it's there. What does this all basically mean in terms of sound? It's a darkish sounding IEM. That shouts a little bit, and by saying a little bit, I'm actually being kind. And you just have to compare it to what is still probably the reference of this type of IEMs, of this style of IEMs, which is the Tanya. And you listen to the Tanya and you listen to the Fiio, and you say, why would I go spend money on the Fiio? Why? Period. This plays, well, it has its flaws, we already know. I'm not going to get into that. It's more mid-bass centric. Sometimes vocals can sound, well, depending on the tips that you use, the vocals can or cannot be more engaging, let's put it that way. But overall, the reality is this: the Tanschem, the Tanya, is a very, very competent little IEM. And the only flaw I would point towards it is I would have liked a little bit more NGI hub and a removable cable. But like I say, you hear this, and then you you stick these things in your ears and you say, oh my god, you know what's going on. It's not that they are bad. I'm sure there will be people that will appreciate their sound, and you know, but definitely not my cup of tea. I guess I'll be playing around with them a little bit, changing some nozzle filters and so on and so forth, seeing if I can bring down that resonance there at that 5-6K area, and maybe that way make this thing more engaging. Because if you actually try and take away that area out, you know, try and take away that peak, the bass and the mid bass and up to about 2K, it's actually quite nice. It's nice. It's got a nice it's fun. It's engaging. It's got a nice, I would say, almost, or you know, correct tonality. It's nice. It is really nice, and it's just a pity that they get spoiled by that. And then there should be a little bit more sparkle. I mean, if one of the criticisms on the Tanya was that it was perhaps a little bit dark, well, this thing is dark. It is definitely dark. You know, so detail retrieval is not its strong point. Well, most of the technicalities really are not really anything spectacular. Perhaps only, I would say, soundstage was acceptable, but detail retrieval, technicalities in general are not its forte. But here we go. That's the latest. Well, that's one of the latest releases from Fiio. In this particular case, Jadeaudio and the JD3. All right, so that's out of the way there. Now on to the JH3, and that's a more interesting proposition. This, I suppose, will replace the previous EA3, which was also a hybrid, single DD and single BA. This comes in a very basic package. I mean, no money was really spent on here. You know, the IMs came in there, some tips. The standard cable is actually not a bad cable. It seems very familiar to the cable on the FD1, to be honest. Very familiar. So it doesn't seem to be a horrible cable. Although I have changed the cables just because I have cables, and I just like putting some nicer cables on my IEMs, and that's that. I mean, period. You know, I don't think I have to give too much explanations with regards to why I do it. I'm not going to get into the sonic benefits or flaws of changing cables, because that's a topic that would make us stay hours and hours speaking. But anyway, that's the packaging. IEMs themselves, it's a tried and proven formula in terms of its appearance. The shell looks like many shells that we've seen before, you know, so it's nothing. It's not a unique design per se. You know, it's been done, you know, done that, been there, done that, got a t-shirt and sold the movie rights kind of thing. You can see this huge dynamic driver, 13 millimeters. It's got a dual BA as well, metal nozzle. The faceplate, it's actually got a nice little, you know, design to it. It's simple, but it's just looks nice. Fit, at least for me, perfect. No complaints in the fit department. I'm using as well. Oops, sorry. My apologies. I'm using the standard tips that came with it. So fit, isolation, all of that is just top. I've got absolutely no quarrels with that. What are they like in terms of sound? Well, I'll start by showing you again a diagram, a graph, and here we go. So JH3, try to focus this a little bit more. There we go, JH3. Well, let's start by saying that considering that it's got a huge driver, you would maybe expect a little bit more rumble, I would say, although what is present is fine. It is more, I would say, perhaps more mid-bass focused than necessarily sub-bass focused. There could have been just a little bit more sub-bass, but anyway, that's fine. Then it has you know, the usual pinna gain around 900 to 1K. It starts going up with a decent pinna gain, nothing too aggressive, and then it stabilized itself off more or less until about 7K, and you see the transition as well to the BAs there. And the peak there, that little peak that you see there at 4, is in no way, well, at least to my ears, aggressive, nothing. The area which is aggressive has been quite tamed down, so, you know, very nice there. And then you have that 8K peak, which I'm assuming again, well, not assuming, I know it's a coupler related issue, and then got all that energy past the 9K, you know, 9-10K, you got all that energy, which is very noticeable. And the thing that you straight away notice when you hear the JH3 is that it's a very open sound. It's very airy. It's nice, it's engaging, it's interesting, but it's perhaps not for those of us that are more audiophile, let's say, in what we want. It's perhaps not the most correct. Nevertheless, not being correct, I didn't find it to be distastefully done or harsh or aggressive. It just lends the sound this artificial openness, which is very typical. It's not. I mean, this is not the first time it's been done. So it just gives the sound this sound. Okay, which is not, it's not aggressive, it's there. I mean, perhaps maybe some people will find it aggressive, will find it too much. For my ears, and maybe because I'm already an old man, I didn't consider it to be aggressive. If anything, I did find it just to become a little bit fatiguing after a while, only because it is not genuine, in the sense that it's not the reality, it's just overemphasized. So after a while it gets just a little bit too much. You know, you want to either maybe perhaps lower the volume, or then just change altogether the earphones. However, having said that, having that extra also plays towards it in its favor. So if you're in a place where there's a little bit more outside noise and so on and so forth, that will help. What can I say about the rest of the presentation? And for that, I'm actually going to put it together here with one of the IEMs, or the IEM that I basically made most of my comparisons to, which is the ZEX, the KZ, the ZEX. Okay, so JH3 red line, as you can see, KZ ZEX the purple line. And if you notice that energy there, that 5K, it kind of makes the ZEX sound a little bit, I don't know if the correct word is honky, but when you listen back and forth one and the other, you notice that the vocals, especially female vocals, they sound more correct with the JH3, and they sound like they are at the beginning of a tunnel with the ZEX. And then, yes, you definitely do notice that past the 9-10K area, the JH3 has got more energy, and in that aspect, although the ZEX has less, the ZEX is more correct. But overall, the sound is very similar. They have a very similar sound. I found the bass on the JH3 to be just that little extra cleaner, just a tad little bit cleaner. What I did like about the JH3, and I actually got 2 pairs, which again is something which I sometimes do quite often, is in terms of channel imbalances. For those 2 pairs, there's absolutely, well, almost nothing. They are almost perfectly matched. I saw differences in some areas of like 0.5, half a dB, which I cannot say the same for the KZs, although the KZs are not a bad example, mind you. KZ actually in that aspect is pretty decent. TRN is a different case, for example, but KZs are actually quite good in that aspect. But anyway, give praise where it's deserved. And in terms of channel imbalances, on the JH3, nothing, honestly. Very nice. So as I was saying, vocals, the male vocals are perhaps the ones that are the more correct ones, or the more correctly portrayed ones. The female vocals, sometimes might sound a little bit too artificial, in my opinion. Instruments, again, it's always that energy that it has. It's fun, it's engaging. It will be nice if you're going to be listening to some perhaps EDM or something like that, or some techno. But when you want to listen, and when you're used to listen to a more varied spectrum of music, like I am, and like many of us are, mind you, you know what a certain song should sound like, or at least what it should sound like to you. So you very much pick up on it sounding natural or it's sounding artificial. So it sometimes can sound a little bit artificial. In terms of technicalities, detail retrieval is very good. It's we're talking about the price. I'm not saying it's a detail retrieval monster. It's got good detail retrieval. It's got decent enough imaging soundstage. Okay, it's again decent for the price. And compared with the ZX, it's a give and take. You know, it's one wins, the other loses. It's very neck and neck. Overall, which of the two, in my opinion, is the one that I prefer or that I like the most? The JH3. I mean, not because it's the latest or anything, but because it just has that. How can I try and explain this? Neither are correctness monsters, if I can portray that idea properly. So what I'm trying to say by that is neither of them will be the absolute must in terms of timbre and tonality and so on and so forth. But for my music that I listen to, and as usual I'll post a list, this just sounds a little bit, I just like the JH3 just a little bit extra. There are songs, however, that the ZX does better than the JH3. Yes, there are a few songs, especially some male vocals, the Joe Cascaro and so on. I mean, the ZX does it, for me at least, better. And some instruments as well, some guitar solos that I usually listen to. The ZX also actually gets the job done nicer. But anyway, it is what it is. I didn't compare it to the ZX Pro because the signature is radically different, and although it perhaps would have made more sense to compare it to the ZX Pro because of the price, I mean, we're talking around $45-50 for this, so this will buy you easily two standard ZXs. I just found that the signature was so different that it just didn't make sense to compare, because you put them on in your ears and this one will straight away be the one that will probably please the majority of people in terms of how alive and how fun and engaging it is, while the ZX Pro will probably be something that the more experienced listener will appreciate. The more the more mature listener will understand where it's coming from and what it's trying to do, and will then give praise to its neutrality, let's put it that way, in comparison with the JH3. The other IEM that I also briefly compared it to was the TA2 from TRN, and to cut a very long story short, there's no comparison possible. I mean, this is not a bad IEM. The TA2 is not a bad IEM. I personally prefer the TA1. I think it's superior. And there are a few other IEMs that I mentioned as well in my review of the TA2, which are better, the BQ, EYZ, the KC2, for example. But it just has some little major flaws, let's put it that way, which when compared to the JH3 leave it completely without any chance of even wanting to compete. So yeah, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, the JH3 brings this nice Fiio case, Fiio, which is nice, and it brings a few tips as well, like I mentioned. Well, a few tips is an understatement. It actually brings quite a lot of tips. And that's basically it. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this little take of mine. Oh, one last thing before I go. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that if we would have reached a certain number of followers, I would have given away a Moondrop area. that still stands. I have the Moondrop area. I have it with me. It's packaged, closed. It's not used, nothing. I have it with me, and that still stands. Okay. However, to make things a little bit more easier, let's put it that way. Once we reach 2,000 followers, I will give that area out. All right. Hopefully, if it doesn't take too long, I will try and add another thing to the equation. This is something which I'm giving out of my own money. Nobody's is sponsoring this. Nobody. I've bought the area especially to give out once we reach 2,000 followers. So yeah, that's it, guys. Anyway, thank you very much. Take care. Bye bye.